All right, we are now recording and I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everybody see my presentation? Can everyone see that?
Yes.
I can.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, welcome everybody to this week's OLLI Brown Bag lunch presentation. It's going to be a very exciting one today. Just going to do a little housekeeping before we get started. And we're going to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Cal Poly Humboldt is on the land of the Wiyot peoples, which includes the Wiyot tribe, Bear River Rancheria, and Blue Lake Rancheria. Arcata is known as Gudini, meaning over in the woods or among the redwoods. Wiyot peoples continue to remain in relationship to these lands through ceremony, culture, and stewardship. And here at OLLI, we believe that learning should never end. This is a really cool picture that we took of the Trinidad Lighthouse. It was one of our in-person tours, and it was really, really cool. It's actually one of a lot of in-person classes and activities that we have at OLLI. And it's actually why you should join OLLI. There's so much cool stuff you can do. OLLI membership runs from July 1st through June 30th. And membership must be renewed each year for students to remain active. Primary membership for people 50 and better is $35 annually. That's a pretty good deal if you ask me. And non-members pay an additional charge and are enrolled as space allows. So if you're signed up as an OLLI member, you get priority registration and a discount or the standard rate for the classes. And some other reasons why you should be an OLLI member is you get lower class fees and first priority registration, like I mentioned. You get a Cal Poly Humboldt email account, so you get a .edu email address, which gives you so many benefits to access different databases. You get discounts for certain companies. I just got a Spotify discount package with Hulu because of my EDU email. You also get a discount on the Jack Pass, which is $60 with enrollment in a fee-based class. You get eligibility for course scholarships. You get student discounts at area businesses located locally within Humboldt County. You get to participate in OLLI special interest groups. There's a really cool symphony one right now and a cool book one going on right now. And last but not least, you get library access and a student ID card. So if you're enrolled as an OLLI student in an OLLI class, you get the same library privileges that a Cal Poly Humboldt full-time student would get. And we just want to give a thank you to all the friends of OLLI. We appreciate all of your work and support that you give us, and our program would not be possible without all of your help. So thank you. And also thank you to all the volunteers. Thank you guys so much. We really, really do appreciate and need a lot of the volunteer work that goes into this program. So we also appreciate your support as well. Thank you so much. And without further ado, we will now begin the OLLI Brown Bag presentation, the Affordable Housing Challenge. Beth Matsumoto is not here currently, so we will introduce Chris Dart. I'm going to turn it over to Jane, who is going to give an introduction for us.
Welcome all, and we're happy to see you here. It's a nice chilly morning. I think it's the lowest temperature we've experienced, and my dog thought it was a little interesting to walk on the crusty, frigid lawn. Anyway, welcome to Chris Dart, who's president of Danco Communities. His extensive experience and knowledge in the development and construction industry spans over 30 years with the Danco Group. He pioneered the affordable housing endeavors of Danco Communities and continues to be the visionary principal of the development department at Danco. He's involved in land acquisitions, design development, entitlements, and financing strategies, and has built a vast knowledge in obtaining various forms of local, state, and federal government funding for his project. Danco Communities specializes in developing affordable housing projects by obtaining funding from organizations such as TCAC, USDARD, Home and the Community Development Block Grant, I think is something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and hopefully be able to, I'm going to introduce Beth in case she gets here. She got stuck with jury duty. So we got notice of this at about 9:15 this morning, and it's like she hoped to be out of there, but it could be she's not going to make it. So we'll hope she does, but she's had 20 years of experience in nonprofit affordable housing. She holds a master's degree focused on sustainable community development from HSU and a bachelor's from the University of Colorado Leeds School of Business. After working in corporate management, she shifted gears in pursuit of creating something that endures and improves lives. This new path led her to nonprofit housing. From there, she learned to navigate the complex but rewarding field of developing and preserving affordable housing to help meet a basic need of our community members. In 1915, she was selected as the recipient of the Northern California Nonprofit Leadership Achievement Award for her contribution to affordable housing. As the executive director of Housing Humboldt, based in Arcata, she helped to facilitate a formal partnership with the Rural Communities Housing Development Corporation to strengthen the nonprofit housing sector in Humboldt County and the surrounding region. She's now the director of Multifamily Development for the Rural Communities Housing Development Corporation. So we hope she makes it, but just in case, Chris, it's all yours, and thank you so much for coming.
All right, thank you, Jane. That when you were introducing Beth, that I think the award must have been 2015, not 1915, because that would make her 107 years old.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I said 19. Oh my goodness. I forgot a century.
Well, thank you for having me. I recognize some of the faces and names on the screen, so I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak and present today. I have two PowerPoints to show. One is just kind of talk about who Danco is and what we've been up to and showcase some of our recent projects to give you a sense of what we've been doing. And then the next, I'll end that one and then we can, chat about it and anybody can ask questions or curiosity. It's just really just a presentation about some of the projects that we're doing or have done recently. And then I'm in preparation for this talk. I met with Jane Woodward prior, and we talked about, talking about what is affordable housing to us. What is it? What's going on at the state level? How is it feasible? When I go into the feasibility, I'll actually show you some numbers. I brought one of our financial models to share so you can see kind of the costs and that go into the projects. What are the challenges? We'll talk a little bit about my take on the Gateway project, and then what's going on at the state and what changes could we make to make things better. And then we can, along the way, I'll just pause at different moments and we can ask questions or have discussion.
The good part is Beth just arrived.
Oh, there she
Hi,
is.
Beth. Congratulations on making it.
All right. So I'll go into my first share here. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you all see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me start that. All right. So again, my name is Chris Dart. I'm the president of Danco Communities with the Danco Group. Just going to showcase a few of our projects. Really to start, I think Danco really focuses on being a community member and doing projects that improve the community. It's actually in our mission. So when we think about the projects that we do, we really try to make a difference, make an impact, and produce high quality projects that are a benefit to the community, not just in terms of housing, but also services or whatever the need would be, whether it be family housing, supportive housing, senior housing, or or market rate housing, or all of the above. We really try to pick and choose our projects that'll make a difference. That's how we select our projects moving forward. The picture you see here is a project that we completed in Eureka called Bayview Heights. It's 50 units for formerly homeless veterans and just general population. Danco Group is, we can call ourselves vertically integrated, which is a fancy word for that we do development, construction, and property management. In development, we are focused primarily on affordable housing. We do a little bit of single family, maybe a few commercial projects at the local level, but primarily our offer is affordable housing. We also do construction. We're a couple hundred people in our construction team. We self-perform framing, concrete, painting, roofing, really a lot of the different trades in construction, and we build all of our own projects. And then in addition to that, we are a property management company where we manage all of our properties. We are working, as you'll see from some of the projects that I'm showcasing, all over the state of California, as well as Oregon and Arizona. Again, this is Bayview Heights, project that we just finished in Eureka, permanent supportive housing. It's a 3-story project with lounges, game rooms on all levels, fitness center, rooftop garden, community kitchen. It's a $22 million project, 51,000 square feet, and 51 units. And this has been in service now for about, I think it's been in service for just over 2 years. And it's been a huge success in being able to house previously homeless residents within our community. Here's a project that
Unmute. It not unmute.
I think somebody's
This
talking.
Pardon me,
maybe
hey,
their fault.
Nancy Pelletier, if you don't mind, can you, if there's no questions being asked, could you mind keeping yourself muted? Thank you so much.
So again, this is the project we just completed in Gilroy, which has been in service for several years. This is a 75-unit senior housing project, which it's 100% seniors, but 50% of the units are supportive housing for seniors that were experiencing homelessness, and then 50% just general senior housing. It's a very nice project, 4 stories, Monterey, Gateway, and Gilroy, California. So project some of you may be familiar with. We just completed out on the peninsula of Samoa. It's a $31 million project. It's 80 units, 10 buildings, mostly 3-story construction. What's unique about this project is that all of the units have garages. So every resident here was able to have their own garage. And then the community building is a 4-story building. And within the community building, we offer supportive services. We have 20 of our units are for homeless families. So folks that were families that were, with children that were experiencing homelessness within our community, we were able to set aside 20 units for those families, and then work with the Department of Health and Human Services to provide services for all those residents. So it's a very, very nice facility. It's been in service now for just over a year. This is our project that we just completed in Arcata. This is downtown Arcata, called Sorrel Place. It is a 4-story building. Many of you probably know it. It's 44 units, family housing. There's featuring 1 to 3 bedrooms. There's a picture of the community center in the lower right. And project's been in service for about 8 months now. And we're very, very proud of this building, and it's a very nice amenity. It's also is financed with Affordable Housing Sustainable Community Funds, which gave quite a few dollars to the city of Arcata for transportation improvements, including an electric bus and several sidewalk road improvements that were in support of this project. Here's a project that many of you, excuse me, probably don't know about, that we just completed down in Santa Rosa. This is similar to the Eureka Bayview project, except for it's not specific for veterans. But this is called Sage Commons. It's 54 units, 100% supportive housing that we housed folks that were experiencing homelessness, mostly studio apartments, been in service for about 8 months. And then here's a project we just completed in Fort Bragg, California. We call it the Plateau. 69 units. This project's interesting in that it has 3 different target populations. 23 of the units are for seniors, 20 of the units are supportive housing, and then 25 of the units are family townhomes. So we have 3 different population types on one campus. It's an 8-acre site and just placed in service this month. It's just filling up now. I'm down in Fort Bragg. Just overlooks the Noyo River. Here's our largest project to date that we're doing in downtown San Jose. This is really like in the heart of the city. This is a 90,000 square foot, 7-story project, 56 units, or it's 80 units in total. 56 1-bedrooms, 23 2-bedrooms, and then it's 40 of the units will be set aside as supportive housing, and then the other half just general population, and we're under construction on it now. This is a project that we're currently working on in Eureka. It's on 7th and Myrtle. This is a 3-story, 36 units, 3-story senior housing project featuring 1 and 2 bedrooms and 69,000 square feet. This is one of the financial models I have to show you if we have time about how this project's feasible in Eureka. Many of you probably know it. It's off of 7th and Myrtle. And then on the other side of the state, down in Moore Park, California, this will be our largest project. This is a 200-unit apartment complex, 8 buildings that we're currently procuring financing for, and we'll start construction first quarter 2023. And it's in Ventura County, Moore Park, California, large family apartments in that community. And then finally, we are, as many of you know, we're renovating the peninsula of Samoa. We have 200 homes out here, and we're restoring the historic town of Samoa piece by piece. Been working on it now for 25 plus years. We do have all the approvals in place. We are currently renovating the single family existing homes and selling them, and then putting in new infrastructure. I think today we've sold around 38 homes there, and are continuing to offer those for sale. The renovations include a commercial area on Vance Avenue, a business park, revitalizing the cookhouse, expanding the Maritime Museum, a new camping area. There is a new residential single family homes component, which is in this area in the flat. Live work studios, new roads, trails, pathways, a park, all new utilities, including wastewater treatment, water tanks, corporation yard, utility substation, and fire station. So this is a pretty exciting project, and this is going to provide a lot of different housing types for much in need for many of our community members. Here's some pictures of some of the remodels that we've recently completed: 200 vans, 783 vans, and 20 vans. Some pictures of what they look like at exterior and interior. They're turning out pretty nice. And that's it for that slide presentation. I will pause and see if there's any questions or comments on any of our recent projects or what we're up to, or anything to say about that.
I have I have a question if nobody else does. How did you end up, did you have to buy the entire area of Samoa in order to do what you're doing? And did everybody sell? How did that work? And have you gotten funding for that for affordable housing, or is that considered affordable housing?
Yeah, good question. So the town, about 26 years ago, went up for auction. The town it's an old mill town, so it was owned by, Pacific Lumber Company and then also Simpson Housing or Simpson Lumber over the years. And so it went up for auction. And the company formed an LLC with other local investors and submitted a bid and won the bid. The project has been financed to date all by private capital. And it has been, we have been able to bring in financing for the affordable housing project that we did out there through federal grants and local grants and state money. But otherwise, the town itself has been financed through private equity and private placement loans through banks.
Do you expect to sell those properties, the houses and things, or retain them as rentals?
Yeah, all of the property has been subdivided and been through the Coastal Commission approvals and the Humboldt County planning and planning approvals through the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. And the plan is to sell the existing houses. And they are currently, all the land out there is subdivided into individual parcels. And we have been selling off the single family residential as we renovate them. And they are, I would say this is considered affordable housing. I mean, in terms of, price point, our houses at Samoa are, I would say, lower than maybe a new construction project, new subdivision. The price points out there are able to be less because of renovations. And then, some of the houses are renovating, and some of the people that are buying the houses actually want to do some of the work themselves. So there's options. And then there will be new construction component to it, which will be, just traditional single family residential homes that will be built in the adjacent to the existing single family.
Does anyone else have a question? Yeah, Nancy?
Yeah, I'm wondering about the projects in our local areas. What's the availability? Are they filled? Are they on a list? How do you find that out?
Currently, we're working with, you mean for the properties that are for sale?
For sale, for rent, for whatever? What's the availability for seniors, say?
So, well, the properties are being listed, the single family homes are being listed through Benchmark Realty. So if anybody has an interest in buying a home, you can contact Mark Burchett at Benchmark Realty, who is our listing agent. And then if you're interested in renting, you can contact the Danco offices at 707-822-9000, and there's a list of available rentals. And it's also on our website at www.danco-group.com.
Thank you.
I take it that most of your projects are rentals?
Well, actually, out in Samoa, most of the properties will be home ownership. But we do have the affordable housing property that we built out there, which is all for rent, which is the 80 units.
And Joanne, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. This is a great presentation. What is the acreage for the 7th and Myrtle project, and are there elevators in the building?
It's a very small acreage. It's just over an acre, a buildable area that we're building on. I believe it does have an elevator. Yes, it's one building with elevator access to all stories.
Thank you.
Patricia, did you have further, Joanne? Did you want to say something? No, okay. Patricia Ann wanted to ask about sea level rise with respect to Samoa.
Yeah, all of the new construction is required to be elevated off of the to a different elevation than floor level. So if you notice that, that's why the townhomes that we built out there are have garages underneath for in the event of a tsunami or high tide or tidal inundation, they would call it. And so the facility's been designed basically to take that into consideration, and any new construction has to be considered at those higher elevations for the living quarters.
I
And
see
then-
only one of these projects went over 4 stories for the most part. You did do one 7-story. Is it harder to do a 7-story building and make it affordable?
Absolutely, and that kind of goes into my next presentation, which would be, yet to answer your question, Jane, yes. Once you get over, I mean, California code allows you to do 5 stories of wood. But if you were to go above 5, you would have to do concrete podium foundation or podium construction. And that gets into a higher cost. So the project that I flashed on the screen down in San Jose, which is a 7-story building, it has 2 buildings of concrete and then 5 buildings of wood frame. So your cost goes up substantially. When you're working in an urban setting like San Jose, the cost of land is substantial, and so you can justify those costs given that the land cost is so much. I think it's a little harder to do here in a rural area where land is not as expensive, is that there's a pricing point where it becomes infeasible to go higher, which is why you probably don't see a lot of multi-story tall buildings in the areas, because really it's practically speaking, it's not feasible. Maybe I should go into, I want to make sure I leave enough time for Beth, which I want to target that. So how much time do you think I should go before we go?
Oh, another 10 minutes or so.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to buzz through my next PowerPoint here, which will probably bring up a lot of questions. And let me just pull that up here. Am I still sharing? No, I'm not. Let's see. Let me share my. All right. So the next one is. We weren't sure if you were going to come, Beth, so I have plenty of content here to go over, but I will make sure that I keep it short and sweet so you have time to share yourself. So I'm just going to go through and present. I probably won't go into the details of the financial plan for 7th and Myrtle, but can you all see this PowerPoint now? Can you see that?
Yes.
Somebody give me a thumbs up. Thank you. All right. So what is affordable housing as we know it? When I say we, I say Danco. So affordable housing to Danco and Danco's model is really subsidized multifamily housing, also known as apartments, apartment buildings that are subsidized. This is primarily what we do when it comes to affordable housing development, construction, and property management. Those affordable housing projects come with regulatory agreements, and those regulatory agreements restrict the rents below fair market value, and really they're 60% or below the area median income. And the median income in Humboldt County is about $50,000 a year. It's 49,000 something, but rounded up, it's about 50,000 a year. Median meaning 50% of the people make more and 50% of the people make less. So 50,000 annual income per family. So our affordable housing has a regulatory agreement that restricts that we rent them to families earning 60% of median and or below. We finance those with federal, state, and local grants and forgivable loans. They're public-private partnerships. They have public investment, but private ownership. So that there's public funds and private accountability. And then they have a component of just traditional debt, permanent housing, permanent financing with debt. And then they are permanent housing, not temporary housing. Some of the misconceptions of affordable housing, I think, like to talk about is, just because it's affordable housing doesn't mean it's cheap or inexpensive. In some cases, the housing's more expensive than traditional housing, because a lot of the funding agencies really want to see high quality projects. And you'll notice that some of the affordable housing projects are a lot better quality than some of the market rate housing. It's not housing for the poor. Many of our residents are working families, or they're seniors on fixed incomes. They're not halfway houses. We hear some of this stuff at public hearings. They're not temporary housing or shelters, and they're not government owned or ran housing projects. These are privately owned, government financed. Some of the history of affordable housing is the Affordable Housing Act has been around since 1937, which the housing authorities were formed. That was the federal government was loaning money to states and communities for what they called low cost construction. We don't think about it as low cost construction any longer. It's thought of as affordable housing or lower income, but that doesn't necessarily translate to low cost of construction. The public housing authorities traditionally would build public housing projects, meaning that the housing authorities would build them and own them, and there's still some of that going on. In 1974, the Congress enacted the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which allowed low-income housing residents could live anywhere that accepts Section 8 vouchers. That program is still going and going strong. Many of the residents that live just in regular market rate housing, but they have a voucher, so they're able to live anywhere and help offset the cost of their rent. But really the way most new construction affordable housing is done in today's world is through the Section 42 tax code, which is the low income housing tax credit program. And so the IRS essentially allocates tax credits to developers to develop low income housing or housing that's 60% below area median income, which becomes the primary source of financing for projects. And most of the projects that we do are done with that program today. Most of the projects that are done in the country are done and financed with the low income housing tax credit program. Feasibility, how are they financed? They're financed typically through a combination of grants and loans from federal, state, and local agencies. As I mentioned, low income housing tax credits. Those credits are issued to developers and developments that are then syndicated or sold to companies that have high tax liabilities, and then that they put their funds in up front that becomes equity in the project. And then they have hard debt loans or traditional bank financing, construction and perm financing. I was going to review this sources and uses pro forma, but I will not do that now since time is short here. How do developers get paid? These developments are not like your traditional way of thinking about a traditional real estate capital or transaction. A traditional real estate transaction, you'd be looking at a return on invested capital or cash on cash or cash flow, or you would build a property and sell it and get a return on the capital you invested. Really, in the affordable housing projects, we don't have any invested capital. We invest some capital up front. We'll carry the projects until they close on construction financing, but then developers are reimbursed 100% of their capital into the project, and then we are paid developer fees. In the case of us, we do construction. We get construction fees and property management fees. So I only bring this up because it's different model than what we traditionally see, where you get together a group of investors, they make an investment, they keep the investment in, there's cash flow from the development, they get cash return on that cash flow. Our affordable housing projects, because the rents are lowered, there's generally not cash flow in the projects, and any cash flow that's there is used to pay property management, keep the utilities and lights on, and service a small loan from a bank. What are some of the challenges? Some of the challenges are regulations, laws. The environmental reviews are pretty extensive. I mean, it can take, in the case of Samoa, it took 20 years to get that project approved through Coastal Commission in the County of Humboldt. That's 20 years of investment in that project before ever being able to bring in $1 back from any sales. Local approvals can be challenging. It can take, months to get through the approval processes with land use approvals, public hearings, planning commission, design review, city councils. State and federal land use laws are challenging to navigate, and it can be difficult and time consuming, which can make the project take a long time. Some of the other challenges are, for costs, we're in unprecedented times. The sources of costs, some of the sources of the cost increases are supply chain issues from COVID, the war in Ukraine, the trade war in China. We've never seen costs like we're seeing today. We've had, some costs in some of the trades have doubled in the last 36 months from what they were, 3 years ago. And it's a really rapidly changing environment that's hard to predict. We've got subcontractors that are not willing to hold pricing. And when we put projects out to bid, we'll have subcontractors say, well, I'm not going to give you a number because I'm not sure what it's going to cost by the time I get around to my part. And so that's a challenge. We have lumber cost fluctuations and really an unpredictable future around costs, which makes it challenging for developers who have to commit up front what these projects are going to cost. So also some of the challenges are NIMBYs, not in my backyard. We hear the common phrase, I like affordable housing. I just think it belongs somewhere else. That would be the definition of a NIMBY. We have a project in Chico, for example. We just presented it a couple weeks ago. It's on a site that's zoned multifamily. It's been zoned multifamily for 20 years. We're proposing it to do everything, or all the required setbacks, all the required height requirements. We're within the density, and yet the community is still trying to stop the project. And there, a lot of times NIMBYs will use CEQA or environmental laws to stop projects, when in the reality is they're just covering up for not wanting the project and wanting to build somewhere else. Well, these delays drive up the costs. The delays in approvals, drive up carry costs, makes unpredictability, and makes doing development very challenging. In addition, there are limited resources. All of the financing for affordable housing that we go after is competitive. The tax credits are generally oversubscribed 3-to-1, meaning they're able to fund one project every 3 applications that go in, and sometimes even more than that. And then some of the funding from the housing and community development funding resources are 5-to-1 oversubscribed. So there's not enough money to go around to create affordable housing. Is the moral of that story. What is the state and the Fed doing? The state of California has been great. I mean, this administration has been all in on housing, and specifically low income housing. The governor's top priority has been housing and ending homelessness. Since this administration's taken over, we've seen billions of dollars that have come into play since they began. We've also seen a lot of by right legislation passed, meaning projects are exempt from CEQA, affordable housing projects, and are able to move forward without land use approvals, which has really opened up a lot of opportunities for projects to get unstuck that we're dealing with NIMBY issues or environmental issues. And some of the problem with that, though, is that many of those projects, if you use those by right approvals, they trigger prevailing wages. So that's a tough one to balance, because then that increases the cost of the project. But since this administration has taken effect, I mean, and so much money has come through the system, many of Danco's project pipeline has freed up, and we've been able to get projects unstuck and able to move forward because there has been additional resources that have come into play more than what there had been in the past. What more can be done? I mean, I was just reading some statistics in preparation for this. That Freddie Mac estimates that as a country, we're about 3.8 million units short of meeting the need. The federal government spent $90 billion on housing assistance in 2021, yet we're still short 3.8 million units. I think, you know, we've got to get the mindset needs to change, and we've got to get the cost and barriers. The cost is down, and the barriers to getting housing done. We need to stand up to NIMBY groups. We need to reduce regulations for infill development and more by right approvals. Cost of development, it's got to go down. I mean, some of our projects average just in fees alone and impact fees average $20,000 per unit in development impact fees. And then we've seen them as high as $50,000 per unit. These are fees for sewer, water, environmental impact fees, which I get they're real, but they've gotten so high that it's making projects challenging and less affordable. And then I think, you know, some of the amenities and features that are prioritized, you know, I think that the mindset should be, you know, that we got to get the housing first. I'm all about the amenities and doing high quality projects, but there's a balance. And then I think, you know, the mindset of, you know, that's been in the past, which is backlogged this demand is, you know, we got to slow the process down. Well, I like to say the opposite. We need to speed the process up. We're in a crisis, and the mindset changed from slow down to hurry up, because we need several million housing units, and we're not getting there, and the gap continues to grow. I already kind of spoke about the gateway. I'm going to skip that. Just quickly, and this is my last slide, is on what about market rate? You know, we need all kinds of housing, not just affordable. The cost to build is rising up between $300 and $400 per square foot. That's our just cost of construction is up to $300 to $400 a square foot. You know, HUD's general rule is that 1/3 of your income should be spent on housing. If the median income in Humboldt County is $50,000 per year, that means you have $16,000 per year for housing, or $1,300 per month. On the low end, our housing projects are costing about $400 per door. Well, the cost of capital is $24,000 per year. That's about $8,000 short of what somebody would need to cover the housing cost at a market rate housing, which is why you're not seeing a lot of market rate apartments be done, because of the cost to produce a market rate apartment would really, for a median household, be more like 50% of their income would have to be spent on housing to afford that, and people would just rather make other choices. So that's it. Sorry to rush through that, but there's a lot there, and I'm here to answer a few questions before we turn it over to Beth.
We have some on the chat, basically, which we'll start with. What about mass timber that the city of Arcata keeps talking about in terms of higher story buildings?
Yeah, I don't have any experience with mass timber. I think we have looked into it, and it's relatively new, but I do think that it is something that could be done in the future. It's just we don't have a lot of experience in it.
And Andrew Whitney commented that the Humboldt County median income for 2022 for a family of four is $80,400. Does that help, or I don't know what the median income is?
Yeah, I was speaking for a one-person household.
One person, okay, that makes a huge difference. Yeah. I would appreciate, well, Sherry Starr has a question. Sherry, would you unmute?
Yeah, hi there. Are the projects such as Sorrel Place, are they going to be affordable in perpetuity? Or I have heard that projects such as these revert to market rate after 30 years, which is correct?
The projects have a regulatory agreement on them for 55 years. So all of the projects that we're doing that have tax credits are regulated for a 55-year period. And that's pretty typical on the projects that are built today.
And who ends up owning these houses?
Excuse me, I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, who ends up owning the properties? Investors or?
They're owned by limited partnerships. So they're owned by, there's general partners and limited partners. The general partners are typically the developers. So Danco, as well as a nonprofit group, are the general partners of the development or the ownership structure. And then the limited partners are investors who buy the tax credits.
Would you be willing to go back and go ahead and show us the part about the Gateway project?
Well, I think my comments were really around, I think the Gateway project is, I appreciate what's being tried to be done there and the conversations have been had. A lot of people ask me, how are we going to build 8-story, 10-story buildings? And how would you be able to do that? And my answer is I wouldn't be able to do that. It's pretty infeasible for cost of construction to be able to build that high, not just the podium, but also just under construction, being able to get a forklift up. You can pretty much 4 stories is as high as you can reach from the ground. So you would need special hoisting equipment. You would need special equipment for your workers. You have to provide elevators during construction, and just overall in general, the cost of construction goes up substantially when you go above 4-story construction. And so my comments and the questions that I've been asked around Gateway is, how are you going to do 10-story buildings? And I can't find a way that that's going to be feasible. But what we're seeing that down in the urbans where land is so expensive. It's in San Jose, it's 10 million an acre for a piece of property. So that's a different story. When you're paying that kind of money for property, then your offset of cost of construction to go higher and get more units, you can start to make a feasible analysis. But when you're, in Humboldt County, you're maybe, 500,000 or 700,000 an acre. I don't see that.
And we have a question. Are you seeing 300 per square foot for non-prevailing wage jobs?
Minimum, we're seeing 400 a square foot for non-prevailing wage jobs, depending on type of construction. The project in Eureka, the senior housing project, is right around $380 a square foot for construction.
And aside from what you're doing out on Samoa, are there home ownership opportunities? Or what thoughts do you have about that? Can it be done with the funding options you have available from the state and feds?
Well, I think Beth's going to talk about that more, so I'm going to leave that for her to describe.
Okay. Are there plug and play elevator units under 4 stories? What does that mean?
I'm not sure what that means.
Andrew, what does that mean?
Is the cost of the elevator technology coming down, or is it going up like everything else as we try to get more accessible units?
I mean, it's going up relative to everything else. I'm not seeing anything extreme around elevators, but the cost of an elevator is going up just like everything else, just from raw materials and labor.
Sherry, you still have your hand up.
Just lowered it.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? I think we've caught everything. And thank you so much, Chris. And now it's Beth's turn.
All right, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Let me get to my share screen. All right, I think you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hi, so my name is Beth Matsumoto. I'm a little discombobulated because I didn't think I was going to get called to jury duty, but I did get called. So anyways, I am the Director of Multifamily Development for Rural Communities Housing Development Corporation. I'm honored to be part of this conversation, especially with our friends from Danco. So we're similarly a developer that leverages public and private financing to develop housing, but we're a relatively small nonprofit, and we operate at a much slower pace. I was formerly the Executive Director of Housing Humboldt, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But rural communities housing, I'll get to my next slide. is a private nonprofit organization. It's governed by a volunteer board of directors. Our lines of service include development, property management, home ownership, and community building. We're a mission-driven nonprofit dedicated to, let me get to my next slide, sorry about that. So we're a mission-driven nonprofit, and we're dedicated to the acquisition, development, and management of affordable housing. The organization is based in Ukiah and was founded in 1975 with roots in serving low-income seniors. Housing Humboldt, which is based in Arcata, was founded in 1993 by a group of folks who were concerned with the increasing housing prices and stagnant wage rates. I think some of our former board members are on this call. Kay Escarda, Tia Gast was a founding member, Edith Stromberg-Wall, and I think Sylvia Shaw is on the call. I also saw Elizabeth Connor, who was also a former executive director of the organization. So as a nonprofit, you know, we rely on fees for managing highly regulated housing and fees for developing new housing. Housing Humboldt grew to include have 105 units of rental housing and 22 community land trust homes. But the lack of large enough pool of unrestricted funding in a speculative and competitive industry meant that we would always need a strong fiduciary partner. So we partnered with Rural Communities Housing on a development in Arcata, and then naturally we became an affiliated entity of RCH. And so now we're more of a regional nonprofit. We're serving Humboldt, Mendocino, Siskiyou, Tehama, Lake, and Del Norte counties. We manage over 1,300 units of affordable housing, housing that's affordable to low-income families, seniors, individuals, and special needs populations. We also have a community land trust program and a self-help program. We also take pride in partnering with our community-based service agencies or social service agencies to provide services to our residents. Next, I'm going to show you a little bit more about what we have locally in terms of rental housing, and then I'm going to focus a little bit more on our community land trust program. So I don't know if anyone recalls the Holiday Gardens Motel, but it was a motel that was developed in the mid-60s. It had a swanky pool and actual gas lamps. Well, our organization stepped in the mid-1990s and converted the motel into multifamily housing. And it includes studios, 1-bedroom units, 2s, and 3-bedroom units. So it was an interesting conversion from a motel that was in disrepair, and there was a need for housing that our low-income households could afford. It's also in the heart of the Gateway Plan. So this property could potentially benefit from an expansion of units under the planning policies that are being put in place. We also have the Bayview Courtyard Senior Apartments on Union Street. We house folks who are 62 and older. This was a 4% tax credit and bond finance project. And Chris did a great job of kind of showing you the data behind all of the projects that we have developed. So let's see. We went through a little bit of a change after we developed our senior housing. We started focusing on developing supportive housing for folks who are homeless and mentally ill. In 2015, we tapped into the Humboldt County's Mental Health Services Act money to develop permanent supportive housing. And this is the one on E Street in Arcata. And we partner with Arcata House Partners and Humboldt County for the services that are delivered to the folks who live there so that they can have a better chance at remaining stably housed. We also just finished another similar development in the Pine Hill neighborhood of Eureka. This is 30 units of studios, 1s and 2 bedrooms, and the Department of Health and Human Services is a service provider, as well as Arcata House Partnership and RCAA. So again, we partner with our community-based nonprofits to help support the residents to stay stably housed. I'm going to talk a little bit more about our Community Land Trust Affordable Homeownership Program. Let's see, so where am I? So the Community Land Trust develops permanently affordable homes for folks who are earning limited incomes. Under this model, land is held in trusts by the nonprofit, and title to the homes that are built on top of the land are kept separate. And so low-income households purchase the homes subject to a 99-year ground lease. And by locking the subsidy into the land, we're able to create the affordable homeownership opportunity when the low-income buyer comes in and purchases the home only. And a resale formula gives owners a limited return on their investment, and it keeps the homes affordable to the next low-income household. The benefits of the Community Land Trust is we're really trying to create permanent affordability. Again, the ground lease is for 99 years. We're also locking the public investment in the land and retaining that public investment versus recapturing it. The program promotes economic diversity in various neighborhoods. The benefits of homeownership in general, provide asset building opportunities, neighborhood stability, and other social and economic benefits. And the Community Land Trust, as the nonprofit, is the steward of the opportunities. And so we stay involved with our owners and facilitate resales when an owner wants to sell the home. We keep the homes, or we help facilitate that sale to another low-income household. In 2008, we developed a 10-unit subdivision in the James Creek neighborhood. And it was an interesting project because, in 2008, capital basically dried up. And we were in partnership with the city of Arcata. We were able to construct and sell the homes to low-income families as the mortgage industry just basically was overhauled. And so this really was our last Community Land Trust project that we developed. So we have 22 homes right now in Windsong, Plum Village, which is on Aloha Way, and in James Creek. But we really haven't been able to expand our homeownership program. And so we're hoping to look at new ways, creative ways to potentially expand this type of homeownership opportunities in the Humboldt region. Just to give you an idea of how the affordability has worked, we currently have a home for sale in the Windsong neighborhood where homes are, fee simple. The appraised values are $400,000. Our home, which is subject to a ground lease, is for sale for $195,000. It was built in 2004, it has 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths. It's 1,100 square feet, has PV system and solar hot water and a 1-car garage. And so I've provided the income limits there for you. So generally, for a 4-person household, you can't make more than $62,300 on an annual basis. Let's see, I think that's about it. Again, I need to get back to jury duty in about 10 minutes, but I appreciate being part of this conversation, and I'll open it up to questions.
Oh, Beth, thank you so much. I didn't know you were going to have to go back. I would have had you go in
No,
earlier.
it's okay. It's okay. We have time.
Good. What happened to the investment that dried? 2008's come and gone. Why don't we have more investors?
Well, the neighborhood stabilization program came in when, the foreclosure crisis was the government, the state of California, or actually I think there was a federal program, came in to help, communities that were most hurt by the foreclosure crisis. And unfortunately in Humboldt County, we just weren't that, devastated according to their data. And so the neighborhood stabilization program would have helped to make that public investment in the land. Otherwise, working through the home program, through which is a federal program that we tap into the state through, we have not been able to create a new program. It's somewhat price wise, but it's also as a nonprofit, we started focusing more on, the Mental Health Services Act funding, And so at that point in time, we're focusing on permanent supportive housing and have not gotten back to our homeownership program.
Would you mind stop sharing your screen
Oh, yeah,
so I
sorry.
can see if
Mhm.
anybody else has their
Yeah.
hand up?
Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Anybody else have any questions for Beth before she can escape and go back to jury duty? Did you end up on the jury?
Not yet. Not yet.
So you just have to show up again in case they call you, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that
Mhm.
very much and for making it here. I'm very appreciative. Any other questions from anybody? I have a question, if not for you, for Chris, and it has to do with the 2 motels that were converted in Valley West. And I know Danco ended up with one of them, and Arcata House Partnership ended up with the other. And my understanding is that you're doing renovations to make them usable. And just curious as to who ends up owning it.
Yeah, so that our project is a formerly Red Roof Inn motel conversion. And it's through a state program called Project Home Key that was born out of the COVID-19 pandemic as one of the governor's initiatives to end homelessness. So the program essentially, the hospitality industry was one of the biggest hit industries during COVID, and many hotel motel owners were going out of business given, nobody was traveling, nobody was staying in hotels. And so the thought is in addition to that, the growing population of homelessness was rising and rising in communities throughout the state. And so the crisis or the emergency is, well, how can we get housing units as fast as possible? We got underutilized hotels, and we got a growing population of homelessness on the street. And therefore, Home Key program was born. And so it's essentially grant funding that you apply for the state through, and you're able to acquire existing hotels, motels, and convert them into permanent supportive housing. And essentially, it's a fast track project. So we have one that we converted in Oakland. We have another one that we're under construction on in Sacramento. And then 2 others that will be coming next year, one in Oakland and one in Sacramento, and then this one in Arcata. And so, yeah, the funds come in, they're owned by a partnership, which is really just, there's no tax credits involved. It's just grant money from, in the case of the Red Roof Inn, it comes from the state as well as the city of Arcata, and through their CDBG program is what's funding that. And we'll go in and renovate. There's 78 units. We'll renovate all of them and turn them into permanent housing. We're going to remodel some of the common space so that there's areas for caseworkers and recreation activity. And so we're basically going to convert it into a functional community, into permanent housing, which will have a regulatory agreement as well. For the regulatory agreements for affordability is for 55 years, but we really only have a funding plan for the permanent housing side for 20. So in 20 years, it could convert to just general affordable, or we might be able to get additional funding in and extend that to 20 years and continue to offer the same services from that point on.
It's considered very low income housing, is that correct?
Yes, it is. Very low and extremely low, and that most of the residents, well, in order to qualify, you have to be either homeless or at risk of homelessness in order to qualify to live in. So generally, the rents that the residents will pay will be 1/3 of SSI or 1/3 of their income, and then the rest of the rent is subsidized through housing vouchers or the Home Key program or a capitalized operating reserve.
And how is Arcata House Partnership operating? Is it on the same basis?
It is. It's the same program, same structure. They have a different facility. We're 2 separate entities, but we are working closely and collaborating together on the 2 properties. But they are working under the same structure.
Elizabeth, you have a question?
Yes. Oh, and I'll also report, just to follow up on that, Arcata House this weekend moved 60 people into the Grove, the other project that was funded under that. So 60 new people have housing, some of them for the first time in 30 years, which is very exciting.
And isn't there money as part of that for providing services? And is that what you were talking about, Chris, in terms of the service provision limited to 20 years? I heard it was fewer years than that.
Well, it depends on what everybody models it differently, but we're working with Redwood Community Action Agency as a service provider for the Red Roof Inn. And they're able to get certain subsidies that come into the project that we're forecasting out 20 years. But yes, it depends. I mean, our project in Oakland, we have an 8-year subsidy plan. Project in Sacramento, we have a 30-year subsidy plan. So it just depends on the resources that are available.
So I actually had a question for Beth Matsumoto.
Your turn, Beth.
And the question is, well, first of all, thank you for the great presentation. And second of all, well, two-part question, which is, one, what do you wish the public knew about nonprofit affordable housing development? And the second part of that question is, what can people in the public do to support nonprofit affordable housing development?
So I guess from the nonprofit perspective, we have a relatively small pool of unrestricted funding, and yet we still have to, every deal that we try to develop is highly speculative. We have to compete with a number of other, we have to compete with Danco, we have to compete with other rural organizations out there. So it's it's a very challenging, marketplace to be in. But, we try to, I guess, our strength is in our roots with the community, I think, is with, our board members, the relationships we have with the other nonprofits that help provide supportive services. So I think that's where it comes from.
Great.
Thank you. And I guess maybe a final question. How on earth can we manage to produce affordable homeownership housing? Is it economically viable, and can you get state funding and federal funding to build condos?
The subsidy is so great that we need. The land cost is so high, the new construction cost is so great. It's really challenging. I think one of the models that we're going to look at is going into the existing homes that are in need of community development or rehab or conversion. And so we'll take a look at that, but it's going to take a lot of public subsidy to be able to make these affordable to folks who are earning, limited incomes.
Chris, do you have a response for that?
Public sector.
Thank you, Beth.
I mean, we did a project with the city of Arcata, 10 units in there just off of where some of the courtyards, we called it courtyards phase 3. And those are for sale home ownership. And we sold all of them. And the city got funding from HCD as part of their home ownership program and put a soft second on title, which allowed the borrowers to borrow about $120,000 less because the city was able to subsidize with a soft second, and then be able to own those. Those are townhomes essentially. So it's being done. We haven't done a lot of it, and it's not really popular, that program. But we're looking at another project in Lakeport with a nonprofit group, Burbank Housing, which some of you know, and in the Santa Rosa area. We're working with them to develop some for sale home ownership under a similar program. So I think, it can be done. It's just, it does have its challenges though.
Okay, Arcata, you have a question?
Yeah, let's see if I can.
You just muted yourself.
How about now?
That works.
Okay, good. One of my buttons doesn't work right, and I'm not sure which one. Anyway, congratulations to both of you guys. We're not meeting our numbers with individual houses, although we need all kinds of housing. But I'm really especially interested in seeing more apartments built because I don't see how we can meet our numbers without more units available. And so I was wondering, Beth, I put in the chat, Pine Hill is just now finishing up, and do we have anything else in the pipeline planned for this region? I know you work in the 5 counties, so I don't want to see Humboldt County get lost in the mix there.
Yeah, that's right. I have been working, predominantly outside of Humboldt County, unfortunately, as we're more regional. But we are, looking at other properties. We're hoping to overcome the PG&E crisis that's happening in Southern Humboldt and potentially developing a conversion of a motel in Garberville. And we're also looking at the city of Eureka, but it's a very challenging and competitive marketplace, but I'm sure Chris has more in his pipeline locally.
I mean, we're always looking, most of our workforce is here locally, and frankly, they're tired of going out of town working. So our focus is always to serve here locally as much as the need is. And we've done quite a bit within Eureka and Arcata and Fortuna and even down in Rio Dell. And so we're looking in different areas to continue to have projects moving forward, including all the communities, Arcata, Eureka, and even in McKinleyville. Don't have a lot going now, but we do have Samoa, which is going to produce a lot more single family for sale. We have a potentially a project in mind in Arcata down in the Creamery District on some property that we own down there, the old Read and Write site. It's got potential. And then, we're looking at some stuff out in Eureka area into sort of the downtown.
Joanne Shook asks, is there a market rate version of the Danco affordable housing quadplexes in Fortuna?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. There's a quadplexes in Fortuna?
You have a, am I unmuted? Yeah, you have a really nice affordable housing development in Fortuna that uses like the quadplex model in a triangular shape.
Oh, like I think we call it Yarrow Village.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Do we plan on doing that elsewhere? Absolutely. Yes.
Have you already built market rate housing with that model?
Oh, no, we haven't been able to find, like I was trying to explain in my presentation, is we have not been able to find a market rate model that works. The cost to build is so high that our rents would have to be extremely high to be able to bring a market rate project into production. Usually, if you've noticed, any of the multifamily market rate housing that's being done is generally around the university because they're able to charge more rents for the student housing, and they double up and basically charge by the room. But we haven't been able to find a successful market rate model. Although what we are working to do is to incorporate some market rate units within a overall mixed income project, because that market is being underserved. And then in addition to that, at the state and federal level, the state is starting to recognize, and the feds are starting to recognize, that middle income is being left out. And so there are lots of conversations around programs that are on the horizon to serve the needs of those folks that are at 80 to 120 of AMI. So if funds start to open up, subsidy funds start to open up for those target populations, then we'll start to see more of that.
Andrew commented that the price to build a 1,300 square foot home at $350 per square foot is $455,000, not including the land.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
a huge problem.
It is.
I mean, when we moved here in 2008. Well, we bought it in 2007. We calculated it was about 150 per square foot. So that's a huge, huge increase. And we got a 1998 home.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things I was going to show everybody is my financial model, which, you know, there's a lot more that goes into real estate development than construction costs. There's design, there's engineering, there's finance fees, there's impact fees, permit fees, carrying costs, environmental reviews, surveys, and market studies, and phase one assessments. I mean, it's construction's, albeit the largest line item in a development budget, land, but it's probably 60 to 70% of the cost, and then there's additional 30% in other costs. But I don't
What's the reality of having either manufactured housing brought in, or they're now talking about 3D printed housing? Is any of this stuff viable here, and could we get it? Would it be viable to do?
I mean, it's out there. Modular construction is one of the current execution strategies for a lot of apartment builders. In fact, one of our close colleagues and good friends who's partnered with us on many projects here in Humboldt opened up a modular plant in Idaho. And the challenges around modular is transportation. Getting to Humboldt County with the big semi trucks that carry these modular units is really infeasible. They can't get here. So they have to be accessed through close to a railway. Essentially, they're able to do modular in the Bay Area and the big cities, but going over some of these mountain roads and rural towns is impractical and not really possible. I know Hoopa Modular has done some when that was going up in Hoopa, and they've been able to get some of that modular stuff and pre-built prefab going, but at a large scale, we haven't really seen it. We've done one project that was modular and in Chico area, and it worked out. I mean, our costs were about 15%. We weren't very good at it. We only did one, and so it was years ago. You have to kind of do them over and over and over again to build that expertise. But yeah, people are doing it, and it's one of the strategies in order to get the cost down.
Do we have the local expertise in terms of carpentry, electricians, plumbers, et cetera, that we need to build the kind of housing we project we need?
Definitely a challenge. I think trade schools, the CR trade school is good. Any other trade schools that could form. I mean, we have a large crew that we keep busy, but it's definitely a dying trade. It's interesting that a lot of the younger generations aren't getting into this work. We have a few, but we definitely have an aging workforce out there with the expertise in carpentry and those type of trade skills that seem to be fading away.
That's a huge problem. And then I bypassed one issue. Julie Desai-Elcott asked, indicated she'd love to hear how the 7th and Myrtle project got built.
You mean how it got funded? Is that what you mean, Julie? Yeah. Well, it was funded through funds from the city of Eureka. They committed $1.2 million into the project. It was funded through a infill infrastructure grant program through the Housing and Community Development, which we also used on many of the projects in Arcata, including Sorrel. And it was funded with low-income housing tax credits. And then that Humboldt County Housing Authority allocated project-based vouchers on all 36 of the units as well, which that subsidy was able to increase our debt financing. So yeah, we applied to the state, I think for 5 years in a row, and struck out for many times, and finally were able to get it on the last go around and get it over the finish line. But it's a challenge. I mean, senior housing, unfortunately, is on the bottom of the priority list for the 3 housing types, being supportive housing, family housing, and senior housing. the state funds the least amount of senior housing, and it's the third priority out of the three housing types. And so whenever a 100% senior housing project is trying to compete, it's definitely the most challenging to get funded.
And last but not least, I think I would be very interested in knowing what you think can be built in the Gateway area, given the constraints of part of it being in the coastal zone, part of it being subject to potentially sea level rise within 20 to 30 years, the infrastructure issues, etc.
Well, I think there's a lot going on there. I mean, there for sure. I mean, there's a lot of hoops to jump through with the Coastal Commission and being able to get your local coastal plan approved. But I do think that it's wise to do infill development, and there's a lot of underutilized properties down in the Gateway, and there's a lot of resources downtown. You've got all your public transportation, you've got your, pretty much everything you need down in the area. I think there are a lot of challenges, but I think there's also a lot of opportunity down there. And the city of Arcata has proven to be the downtown area has been a lively place to be. And I think the housing contributes to that. And I think it's pretty ambitious, but I also think that it's as appropriate as anywhere. I would rather see it built infill than to spread out and go into the hills and make it more difficult for some of the amenities and transportation and infrastructure that's already in place.
Anybody have any other questions or comments or what have you? Yay, nay? Then I want to say thank you ever so much for this wonderful presentation and sharing all this with us, and Beth for making it here despite the situation with jury duty. So we really appreciate it. And we will say this is the close of the fall session of Brown Bag Lunches, and we resume on January 23rd. And hope you all have wonderful holiday season. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the new year. And hope you'll join up with OLLI. If you haven't already, we'd love to have you as members. So we look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Beth.
Bye.
And then this recording should hopefully be available by the end of this week with closed captions available.
Thank you, Dane.